Hi everybody. Yesterday in my Instagram story, I said that I was giving people a choice on what they wanted me to talk about on Instagram Live. And I gave people a choice of either talking about hiring your first employee or talking about traveling cheaply. And so 80% of people picked, hey mom, if my mom's the only person who watches this, I'm going to be embarrassed. So 80% of people picked they wanted me to talk about traveling cheaply rather than talking about hiring your first employee, probably because hiring an employee is kind of a more boring topic. So, hey, Char. Okay, so now my mom and Charlene are here. So, okay, and Jess is here. Okay, good. So I don't feel so weird. So yeah, yesterday on Instagram stories, I asked people to pick if they wanted me to talk about traveling cheaply or if they wanted me to talk about hiring an employee. And most people pick traveling cheaply, and that's probably because I have a lot of followers who aren't photographers, who are either brides planning a wedding or people who just want to travel and have fun. So we're going to talk today about cheap travel. I'm not an expert on it, and I'm not saying that the way I do it is right or wrong. I'm just going to share what I know and what I've kind of figured out over the years, and the way I do things. So some of the places that I have traveled to, and I'm going to throw out real numbers because I know it's always frustrating whenever people are like, oh, I got the trip cheap. And what's cheap to one person is expensive to another person and vice versa. So I'm going to give you guys like my real numbers of what I really spent on my trips. So some of the places I've been to that I feel, FYI, your sign was mirrored in case you have more. Oh, no. I can't make, I don't have any more signs. So I can't write this backwards. So you're just going to have to pretend. Okay. So, oh well. Okay. So, since one of the places I've been that I feel that I traveled to cheaply. So I traveled cheaply to Hawaii. That was a couple years ago, 10 years ago now. And that for airfare and a cruise around all the islands, I know we spent $1,200 a person. And then I have traveled to Iceland and London, and that I spent $900 on. And all of these are like 8 or 9 day, 10-day trips roughly. Costa Rica, including flights, hotel, activities, meals, like transfers to and from the hotels. For about 8 days, I spent $941.72. And also then I just got back from South Africa, and that is the most expensive. And if you Google going to Africa, I wanted to go to Africa for a while, and if you look up safaris and stuff, it can be seriously $5,000 to $10,000 a person, depending on like how extravagant you go. If you stay in the tree houses, if you stay camping, luxury camping, all that kind of stuff. So when I first started planning to go to Africa this past fall, I started thinking, well, actually last fall, I started thinking, okay, I probably need 5 years to save about $1,000 a year to go. But then I found a really good deal. So I spent $2,100 to go to Africa, and that includes all my flights, including inter-country flights, hotel, most meals, transfers like to the hotel, from the hotel, 2 safaris. I shouldn't say most meals, I'll say some meals. 2 safaris, and that was $2,100. And we probably paid more than most people because we kind of booked it last minute. There were a lot of people on our trip who paid $1,500 for the exact same trip that I took, but they got a better deal than I did. I paid $2,100. So that kind of gives you real numbers that I actually spent. So I try to stay around $1,000 for a trip, including everything, including the flights, the hotel, and all that kind of stuff, for like an 8-day trip. And I can kind of talk further too about like how much money I spent while I was there. And I will tell you, in South Africa, I just totaled it up today. I spent about $600 while I was there, and I certainly didn't even try to stay within a tight budget. So It's definitely possible to do it for way, way, way less, but that's roughly what I spent on it. So I'm going to tell you basically my 3 tips for traveling cheaply are: number 1, Groupon getaways; number 2, a credit card that I'm going to talk to you about; and number 3, if you live in Pittsburgh, this is more applicable to people who live in Pittsburgh, a willingness to drive or get yourself to a bigger, major airport. Okay, so let me talk about first how I went to Iceland and London for like about $900. So in this circumstance, we used Airbnb to arrange for the hoteling, and I used Iceland Air. And so at the time, and I think they still do, Iceland Air has a thing where you can stop over in Iceland and then continue on to cities in Europe, and their fares are pretty cheap. I want to say their airfare was like, it's like $450 roughly, maybe $500 at the most, for a flight from Dulles in DC, outside of DC, to Reykjavik, and then Reykjavik to London, and then London to Reykjavik, and then Reykjavik to Dulles. Okay, so the thing is, you have to get yourself to Dulles. That's the closest city that Iceland Air flies out of. It's about 3.5 hour drive. It's not a major deal. And that's probably, thinking about this, one of my takeaways is that you want to get yourself to a bigger city to fly out of. And for me, I would say, if you're considering travel in the winter, and I learned my lesson, and I'll tell you about this. If you're considering travel in the winter, I would really only do like a 4-hour maximum radius around Pittsburgh, because if the roads get bad and you have to drive it, you're going to have a hard time, which I'll talk to you about. So you can fly out of Dulles, but now, so this is new. Now, there is WOW Air, WOW Air. It's from Pittsburgh. I don't think it's as, I think it's sort of like the Southwest equivalent for Iceland, or maybe even the like Spirit Airline equivalent in Iceland. And I believe they fly from Pittsburgh. So I just saw a fellow photographer went to Iceland, and I think he got a really, really good deal. I want to say like a couple $100, and he went to Iceland. So it's a way easier trip now. And if you haven't been to Iceland, a couple things to consider is, number 1, in the summertime, it's land of the midnight sun, so you have a ton of daylight. But in the winter, when I can go, because of what I do for a living, I can only vacation really in the winter. In the winter, it only is daylight like 5 hours. I think the sun rose officially at 10 a.m. and set at 3 o'clock roughly in December. But it was still a really neat experience, and if you want to see Northern Lights, you can go in the winter. And the flight was about 6 hours from DC, and it's overnight. So it's not a real long flight, super easy to get to. And again, I paid about $900 to go to Iceland and London, and that was using a combination of Iceland Air, driving to Dulles, which is outside of Washington, D.C., and using Airbnb. And I also went in the off season. Okay, so that trip is one trip. Okay, then, so one of my best, I think probably my best deal ever, I have to brag, is going to Costa Rica. So, me, my brother, my sister wanted to go to Costa Rica, and the way I do this is, it all depends on where you're going. You kind of have to have an idea of where you're going and what you want to do. But I just start looking on Groupon getaways. Some people will say to you, like they're nervous to do a Groupon getaway for that much money. And I've had a really good experience. I do look up the reviews. I do make sure what's included is a good deal. And also, you kind of want to research on your own separately, that you can't get a better deal on your own. So for this Groupon, it did not include airfare. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what I did. I went to Costa Rica. I looked up monkey tours on Groupon. They had a really good Groupon. It was for 8 days in Costa Rica. It included your flight. So in the end, for my flight, hotel, activities, meals, and transfers to and from the airport, I spent $941.72. And so about, like I said, about $100 a day is where I try to be price-wise when I plan a trip. Unless it's a major trip like Africa, which I'll talk about. So the way I did this is, so how did I work all these deals? So I think the tour itself was like almost $700 a person. But I used like everything at my disposal to be able to get a cheaper thing. So what I did is you want to open up, if you can. This is like the credit card. Oh, okay, hold on, I have it in here. Okay, so this credit card is considered to be like the quote-unquote king of travel credit cards. And the way it works is, so there's multiple levels of Chase Sapphires, but this is the Chase Sapphire Reserve card. And it's a really good travel card because you get charged 0 foreign transaction fees. So you can use it in another country, not get charged fees. Also has really, really, really good travel protection. So you don't have to buy separate travel insurance. Covers you really, really well if you're renting a car too in another country. So, and they have like a great travel number you can call. You can speak to a real person. So what you want to do is, like, if you qualify for the card, so start thinking about your trip. When you're getting ready to book it, but you haven't booked it yet, get the Chase Sapphire Reserve. The way it works is there is an annual fee for this card, which and keep in mind too, I'm also against credit cards and carrying a balance. I do Dave Ramsey, but the cash back on this card is really good. So what you do is you get the card. There is a $450 annual fee. Again, I do not like annual fee cards, but the annual fee is waived for the first year. So you get the card, you open it up. There's no annual fee the first year, but it's normally $450. So the first perk of the card is you get, every year you use the card on at least $300 worth of travel, you get a $300 credit. So automatically you're getting $300. So that's not bad at all. And then the way the card works is if you spend $4,000 in the first 3 months that you have the card, you get a cash back. You get a ton of points. Like at the time it was like 100,000 points. I'm not sure what it is now, might be a little less, but essentially that resulted in $1,500 in cash back for me on this trip. So I put the entire trip, including the tours, everything on the card, and then got the $1,500 back. So that was like a great deal. And so what you can do is, if you do it that way, and I think the money's worth even more if you do it as points, which I'll talk to you about. So anyway, I booked the tour through Groupon. I then got the flights to Costa Rica through Southwest, because Southwest flies to Costa Rica and they're cheap. It's a quick flight. It's I think it's Pittsburgh to Miami, or Fort Lauderdale. Pittsburgh to Miami, Miami to Liberia, Costa Rica. So super easy. I do recommend the monkey tours. I did that, and if you convert, and I should say this too, if you convert the cash back to points, you can do an even better deal, but that's a little complicated. But anyway, this is the best possible card you can get for travel, the Chase Sapphire Reserve card. Again, annual fee is waived for the first year. So if you have a major purchase, or like let's say you just have a major, like you need new kitchen appliances, or like you need a new furnace, this is a really, really good card to get because it offers the most cash back out of any card in the industry. I put all that cash back towards my trip. So again, I love that card. So I did that through Groupon Getaways, which I do trust completely. However, I just found this out the other day. Living Social, that's a site similar to Groupon. They also have a Getaways, or I forget what theirs is called, travel section. And Living Social, I haven't tried this yet, but they're saying on Living Social, if you buy 3 Living Social deals, you get a 4th one free. So you could essentially, you and another, like 2 people and another couple could buy 3 like tours or travel packages on Living Social and get the 4th one free. That's what I've been told. And then what you would do is you would split, let's say it's $1,000 a piece. You spend $3,000, you get the 4th one free. And then you would take that $3,000 and divide it up amongst the 4 of you, so it makes it even cheaper. So that's something to try too. And not just Groupon Getaways, not just Living Social, but I also noted on here Travel Zoo. So on my trip to South Africa, I asked people, did you buy the tour directly? Like, I asked people how much they paid for it. I asked them, did you buy the tour directly? Did you go through Groupon? Did you go through Living Social? And people were saying they went through Travel Zoo, which is another good one you can try. And if you're super into travel deals, try Yipit, YIPIT. That supposedly aggregates all the travel deals from Travelzoo, Living Social, Groupon Getaways, I think Last Minute Cruises. It does all those. I haven't loved their layout, their interface, but that is something that you can try too, is the Yipit, to get all the deals at once. Okay, so like I said, my best deal was probably going to Costa Rica for $941.72 using all the cash back. Iceland and London paid about $900. Okay, so then my South Africa trip that I just took. So I said previously, before some people joined the conversation, that Africa can be very expensive to go to. I know when I originally was looking, I was looking to spend, or I was getting quotes for about $5,000 to go to Africa, different countries in Africa. That's super expensive. I would have to save up for about 5 years to do that because, like I said, I try to only spend about $1,000 a year or $100 a day on a trip. But I did end up finding a good deal. So if you're interested in going to South Africa, Groupon almost always has Groupons for South Africa. So I did an 8 or 9 day, depending on how you look at it, trip to South Africa. And it was to Cape Town, and then it was to Kruger National Park, and then back to JFK. And I paid $2,100. And to be honest, that's probably overpaying a little bit. There were people on our tour that got it for $1,500, $1,600, or $1,700. But I just was booking more last minute. So Gate 1 Travel always has South African tours. But also, I went with a company called Smart Tours. SMARTOURS. Smart Tours, it was a little bit weird because you had to send a check in, which is like old school. I couldn't just pay for it online. I think if you sent the check in, you'd pay $100 less. So they charge you a little bit of a fee for the credit card. However, I paid the deposit with a check, but I chose to pay the whole balance with the credit card because I wanted the travel protection that my card gives, even if it cost me an extra $100 to do it that way. I'd rather do that than be out all my money if the trip didn't go off or whatever. Okay, so how did I do this? We drove to JFK. It is about 6 hours from Pittsburgh. Would I do it again? Yes. Would I do it in the winter? No. It's too far to go, and if you follow my Instagram stories, there was an ice storm, so we kind of had to hurry to get out of Pittsburgh due to the ice storm. The roads could be bad. What you could do is you can't fly, it's hard to fly direct JFK from Pittsburgh. You could fly to New York and then get a hotel for the night and then get up and get on the flight the next day. But that's another day off work. It's a night in a hotel. So I looked into both. I looked into flying to New York and driving. So to fly to New York from Pittsburgh and get a night in a hotel, you're probably talking about two people. It's probably about $1,000 roughly, because I also would have to park at Pittsburgh, for 9 days. So that kind of thing. So I think driving, we spent about $300. It took us 2 or 3 fill-ups. And the parking was like $150. So I think I saved about $700 by driving to JFK, but I would not do that in the winter. Like I said, my future plan is only to drive about 3 hours to a major airport. Okay, so so how I did it is I just found this deal online, but it was no longer on Groupon or the travel sites. So I just contacted the agency directly, Smart Tours, sent them a check for the deposit, use my card for the second payment, done and done. And like I said, I only spent, now that's where it was cheaper. I only spent about $600 while I was in South Africa for everything, and I ate at great restaurants and all that kind of stuff, because it's pretty cheap over there versus, like, I've heard Iceland. I didn't personally encounter this, but people tell me that Iceland is very expensive to eat there and to do activities there. I didn't really experience that, but I probably wasn't monitoring it as closely as I should have been. Okay, so those are my 3 takeaways. One is trying Groupon Getaways or Living Social, Travelzoo, Yipit, all those kind of things, looking at the deal, and then researching it, researching the travel agency it's through, and even trying to go on their own website directly. The second takeaway I have is to get what I consider to be the best travel card, the Chase Sapphire Reserve card. Obviously, don't get paid or don't get any referrals for sending you this card. I just really, really like this card because the cash back is really good on it. You get a lot of cash back. And my third takeaway is be willing to drive or get yourself to another airport. So, for example, booking it out of New York and then taking like a cheap Southwest from Pittsburgh to New York would work too. So like airports within 3 hours of Pittsburgh, Toronto, Cleveland, well, 4 hours, Toronto, Cleveland, Dulles, maybe Philly, and that kind of thing. And so those are my 3 travel takeaways, how to do it cheaply. And if you have any questions, you can let me know. But thanks for tuning in here at lunchtime, you guys. And hopefully we'll do another Instagram Live with other information that I have found over the years and other research, because I'm a really, really big researcher. If you didn't know that about me, it's like a hobby. So this is my little sign. It's mirrored because I'm an idiot and don't know how cell phone works. But yeah, thanks guys so much for tuning in, and I hope you're having a great day. I know it's still really snowy out there, but yeah, thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye.